Let's do a quick 3,500-year history of anti-Semitism in just a couple minutes. For the Jews, the first 1,500 years were tough as the first monotheistic religion with an invisible God. At a time, the Assyrians, the Babylonians, the Persians, the Greeks, the Romans, the Egyptians were all like, we have multiple gods. The Jews are like, not for us. And so they dealt with an issue there for the first 1,500 years or so. Which then brings us to Christianity, the most famous Jew of them all, Jesus Christ. Many Jews don't accept Jesus as the Messiah. The Jews are accused of killing Jesus, which becomes a problem for about 1,900 years. Now, the Romans, of course, killed Jesus, but the Jews were blamed for it for many, many years, leading multiple popes on crusades to say, kill the Jews on the way to Jerusalem. The Jews dealt with a lot of adversity and persecution during a couple millennia there in Europe. By the way, Pope Paul VI in the 1960s finally said, sorry about that whole killing Jesus thing. We know you guys didn't do it, and we're sorry if it's caused some trouble for you over the last few millennia. They also were accused of something called the blood libel. Jews were accused of killing Christian children to drink their blood as part of ceremonies. Not a thing, but an accusation the Jews dealt with for a long time. You see elements of the blood libel in QAnon today. Notably, during that time, it led to Jews being placed in separate areas to live, including the world's first ghetto, a ghetto in Italy, where Jews were forced to live. Notably, Jews were accused of being clannish and separate and exclusive at a time they were being forced to live in ghettos as one of the many anti-Semitic tropes. In Spain, in 1492, Jews deal with the Inquisition, where they're forced to convert to Catholicism, be expelled from the country, or be put to death. Around then, Jews are continued to be blamed for any time the economy falls apart. At the time the Black Plague happens, the Jews are accused of spreading the Black Plague, of creating the Black Plague, something, by the way, the Jews face again several centuries later with COVID. Among the other issues they face, they're banned from most professions. They are given rights to be able to handle less desirable professions like banking and money lending, where you deal with interest. That then, of course, leads some Jews to do well in banking, accused then of being greedy, of being cheap, and of contributing to every economic downfall. Now, it's not just the Catholic Church. They don't do much better under the Protestants. Martin Luther, who was fighting the Catholic Church, thought the Jews would join him against the Catholic Church. The Jews were like, no, good luck, Martin, but we're not getting involved here. That then leads Martin Luther to say, actually, we should burn down all the synagogues and kill the Jews as well. So that then takes us to the late 19th century, where a pamphlet comes out called the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. This is a fictitious meeting created by Russian authorities to basically say the Jews secretly are meeting behind the scenes to plan the world, to control the world, and they must be dealt with. That then leads to several 100,000 Jews dying in what's called the pogroms in Eastern Europe and Russia. Now, the Protocols of the Elders of Zion has circulated around the world for more than 100 years now, including in the Middle East as well as in America, where it was a favorite of, among others, Henry Ford, the creator of Ford Motor Company, who was a vehement anti-Semite. Among others, famous American aviator Charles Lindbergh, who used to meet with Henry Ford when asked what they talked about. They would say, we talk about the Jews and the problem that they are. At the same time, the Jews are being accused of uber-capitalists and the Protocols of the Elder of Zion, trying to control the world through banking, through rich families like the Rothschilds. They're also being accused by other people who hate them as communists trying to destroy the capitalist system. The father of communism, Karl Marx, from a Jewish family. So many Jews involved in the labor movement, involved as unionists. And so they're also being accused in various societies, especially across Europe, as trying to destroy the capitalist system. Enter Adolf Hitler, who basically takes all of this and says the Jews are the root of all of society's problems. They lost World War I for Germany. They are vermin. They are a lower race. They need to be eliminated. They need to be pushed out and then eventually killed. And so he says basically his issue is that Jews are of a lower species, and whether they're communists, whether they're uber-capitalists, they are a problem and need to go. By the end of World War II and the Holocaust, nearly half of all Jews in the world have been murdered. Notably, this brings us to effectively the two anti-Semitisms of the modern era. There's the Hitler shtick, which is ascribed to by far-right extremists, white supremacists, neo-Nazis, who continue to consider Jews a non-white lower race. But then you have the extreme far left, that actually their problem with the Jews is that they are white, that they're colonialists and oppressors controlling the media, trying to control the world, partially through Israel and Zionism, the belief that Jews should have a right to self-determination and their own state. The far left sees Jews through the prism of intersectionality, that as powerful people themselves, the Jews themselves cannot be oppressed or face any sort of persecution or discrimination. And despite the fact that the majority of people who came to Israel were refugees, and Israel itself is the indigenous land of the Jewish people, that they themselves are a colonial oppressor state. So in the modern day, in sort of the horseshoe curve of politics, the far right and the far left both have an issue with the Jews. They just can't agree whether they're white or not. By the way, we should note that half of all Israeli Jews come from Arab countries. Several hundred thousand of them were expelled and persecuted going back 60, 70 years. There you have your quick summary as to why anti-Semitism has been a thing 3,500 years. We were monotheists, then we killed Jesus. Then we drank the blood of Christian children. We started the plague, we started COVID. We're greedy, we're uber capitalists trying to control the system, we're communists trying to kill the capitalist system, we're white oppressors, while at the same time we're also a non-white lower race. So pick your reason for anti-Semitism. By the way, we should note that as of today, there's about 14 million Jews in a world of 9 billion people. That's your quick summary of the last 3,500 years.